What is up, guys? Welcome to the Prism Podcast. It's your boy, Justin.
It's your boy, Josiah.
And we are back for another episode, episode 11. We're going to be mixing it up again, doing another interview for you guys with our man, Talen Hartman.
Yeah! Give it up for Talen! Woo!
Talen, we're so thankful for you to be joining us for this episode, just to kind of get some insight from you and get your perspective on things, because we want to learn the full spectrum of God and from different people on this channel. And so we thank you for being on this episode with us.
Yeah, I'm happy to be here. I'm glad y'all are doing this.
Yeah, definitely. So Talen, why don't you tell us a little about who you are, what you do, just who is Talen Hartman?
Yeah, I'm the technical director and lead audio engineer of Abundant Life Church. I work here almost full-time. As far as other aspects of Talen Hartman, I don't know. I'm here.
Yeah. Well, we appreciate you being here, bro. We know that you are somewhat, new to the church and new to this area of work and new to this whole concept. So before you worked here, did you really have a relationship with God or come to church at all? Or explain that to us a little bit.
Yeah, so I grew up, my grandparents were Christian, very Christian. My parents more casually so. So I went to church here and there, but it was mostly small Baptist kind of churches, that kind of thing, around here really. But as far as the more modern Pentecostal style of church, I didn't really have any exposure to that whatsoever. The only real exposure I did have of that was caricature, really, and seeing mega churches on TV and being like, what is happening over there? What even is that?
Understandable.
So it's kind of, when I came here, I thought this was a big church. So, and it is, but not to that level, So, it's way bigger than anything I'd ever experienced. Though, for sure.
Would you have classified yourself as a Christian coming into the church? Did you kind of know Jesus and that he was kind of the Savior and all that kind of stuff coming into church, or did working here at the church kind of bring that to you?
So I had read a good bit of the Bible before, mostly Old Testament stuff, because of course I'd always start and then restart. And,
it's hard to get through.
I had no idea what I was doing. I was just a kid. I guess I'll start at the beginning.
Right.
And that was, I knew a good bit. I knew the broad concepts. It was all just articulated fairly differently than it is here. So I was familiar with all the ideas. I had my little Jesus piece in middle school. And,
nice.
A little wooden cross on a string necklace, that kind of thing. And then kind of through high school and college, just fell away from it. Got more cynical and skeptical, that kind of thing. Wasn't really about it. Was mostly reading other stuff and trying to. It just didn't really seem like it had any relevance whatsoever to my existence or really anyone around me, except for my grandparents. But I didn't really quite understand what it was about at all.
So coming into the church, how has your perspective on Christianity, God, how has that all changed since from before to where it's at now?
Like I said, I was pretty cynical and skeptical and fairly kind of quietly hostile, to be honest. It was this doesn't make any sense. How could anyone believe this?
Yeah.
What's going on here? There has to be something to this. But I had the fortune of starting to work here. I had previous church gigs, but I was mostly doing other like studio and live sound and things. So it was just like another live sound gig basically, but it was a convenient one because it was consistent. But I came here. It was essentially it started out as a professional learning opportunity.
Gotcha.
And that was kind of the extent of it. I don't know that I would have stuck around to really continued coming back, to be honest, if not for the incentive to like get paid. But I'm fortunate because I had that incentive. I was here and I was listening and I was able to get far more exposure to it than I otherwise would have if left to my own devices.
Yeah, that's awesome.
So, yeah, I kind of was forced into it, but in a good way.
Yeah,
you know?
Cool. So going off of that, what would you say was your experience or moment that with God that kind of confirmed your belief in Him and kind of made you say, I want to commit my life to you?
Yeah. So kind of during that interim period, my thoughts at the time were clearly God as a concept alone is powerful enough to drive people to do all these things throughout history and to lead people to act in the ways that they do now, right? But what, as far as like the like metaphysical claims or anything like that, I was just kind of reeled back from it. And I think to a degree, I still kind of lean in that direction in the sense of I don't really know what that means. Like we're constrained by our human understanding and our human limitations of articulation. It's difficult enough if all three of us described that microphone, we'd all three describe it in different ways, right?
That's true.
And that's one small thing sitting on a small table. So if you're going to take an idea as big as God, clearly there are going to be some...
dude.
You're going to describe it differently.
Wow.
Yeah.
So that... It was kind of a matter of what am I even looking for here? What is this idea theoretically and experientially, and I don't know that I've had a single moment that was like, this is what this means. It's just been a very gradual kind of uncovering of the experiential.
For sure.
I guess like I normally would say that the purpose of the theoretical is to create an environment for the experiential. So when people go to church, when people go to any house of worship in any tradition, really, it's not a matter of, to me at least, it's not a matter of finding God or having access to God, but knowing what access you already have, and just uncovering what is and figuring out how to navigate that space. If that makes sense.
I like how you were saying, that you don't think there was like an exact moment you like came to Christ or whatever, like that you finally believed. And I think a lot of people get that misconception that once it happens, it's like this big ta-da moment. It's like, oh wow, like I have God. But a lot of times it's not that. It's like a slow, gradual increase. And that's kind of what faith is and what we believe in and what we do. It's not some big, oh, wow, everything's different now. No, like, you're still human. I mean, you may have different beliefs or whatever, but, it's not going to be always some big spectacular moment.
For sure. And that the concept of walk by faith, not by sight, some people may experience that ta-da moment. There may be there may be some. God does that. But for a lot of people, you do have that slow removing the curtain to see the big picture.
Yeah.
And, that's great because God wants us to trust in Him and put our faith in Him versus just saying, okay, I've had my moment. Now I don't really need to worry about it anymore because I've been exposed.
Right.
So.
Like we're always arriving, and to think that we've arrived is to no longer be arriving. If we think to ourselves, oh, I've got it in the bag, I know what this is now, then that's an absolute lack of humility. Like, that's pride in a nutshell. And if pride is what we're trying to get away from, then you've kind of fallen into your own trap.
Wow.
There.
That's so good, though. I love that.
Really good.
But that being said, I mean, like, glimpses like that, when you have people have those ta-da moments, that is legitimate. And I think some of them you kind of only get in retrospect. Like, I know, looking back, moments where I was writing or playing music or just existing, now in retrospect, it just seems so clear that if I ever had access to, a genuinely spiritual plane, it was in those moments, but of course I didn't think about it.
For sure.
I didn't articulate it as such at that time.
Wow. That's cool. Switching gears a little bit, we want to ask you, who right now is your biggest influencer or mentor in your life?
So I guess first, in terms of people around me, of course, Pastor Ryan has been a huge mentor and kind of guide and helper. And I wouldn't be sitting here if not for him. I probably wouldn't even still be in Virginia. So him for sure. And I don't know that I couldn't quite articulate the degree to which I feel like I've grown as a result of knowing him. And
wow.
And I feel like we have a pretty it's one of those relationships where I feel like we cover each other's blind spots, I mean, the things that are just so apparent to him, whether he's walked through it or whether he's just kind of always had that in his head or in his toolbox or what have you, are total blind spots for me. And I feel like we're like a positive feedback loop of growth and development,
Yeah.
For sure.
As far as other people around me, for sure, all of my friends, Chris, Lenny, Gideon, are absolute inspirations in staying alive and staying human, really. Like, I tend to be, or can, when left alone, tend to be fairly robotic and just kind of not do anything except what I know. I just kind of do the same pattern over and over again. But they make me live, basically. My cousin Caleb, for sure, is a huge inspiration and influence. And it's like my childhood best friend, essentially, and how our lives have kind of intersected at various points and how we've drifted apart and come back together, and seeing the ways in which we grow when we don't see each other. It's like don't know, that's cool. But I feel like at this point in history, at least, I suppose we have to acknowledge all the influences outside of our local circle that we have. I mean, we're all influenced by social media and public figures and things like that.
Sometimes the most influential people are the ones around you.
That's right.
Every day that you see them every day. So it's really good.
And incorporating yourself and having that inner circle, people you can go to grow and get feedback from, like you said, it's very important to grow emotionally, whether it's spiritual and even sometimes physically, you know.
For sure.
We work out together, we go to the gym, but we motivate each other through that. So It's good to have that group. So that's awesome.
Yeah, and it's easy also to forget how the people around you are influencing you, positively or negatively. I mean, of course, an easy example is like people's parents. You know, everyone has that moment where they realize, I'm my dad, or I'm my mom, you know, and it's super easy to kind of put the blinders on and be like, nah, I'm totally my own person. And that's just not the case for anyone. You know, we exist in context. No one exists in a vacuum.
Wow.
So with that being said, you had mentioned, you know, the influence of social media. And me and Josiah, you know, we were doing research on how to figure out questions to ask you. And we went to your social media, and you asked a lot of very deep questions that had our wheels turning on there. And we were just intrigued. So we just wanted to know, like, what is the purpose behind that? Are you just wanting to gain perspective from other people? You know, are those some thoughts that you've seen other people ask? Or do you come up with those questions in general? We just kind of wanted to pick your brain on that aspect with your social media.
I mean, really all of them are questions that I'm asking myself to a degree. Whether I take the time in that moment to actually write out an answer is, you know, that's not always the case. But I feel like it's very easy to... Everyone has so much going on in their lives. It's very easy to kind of just get caught up by the current and not really take an opportunity or feel that you even have an opportunity to kind of poke your head above the water and look around and ask what's actually going on. You know, whether you're headed in the direction that you should be, whether you're doing the thing in this moment that you should be, that kind of thing. And if that's apparent anywhere, I feel like it's apparent on social media. I mean, you see how people's influence on each other just kind of bounces around and kind of goes from one person to the next, and you know, sometimes flies into an echo chamber and amplifies in there and then shoots out 10 times as radical as it went in, you know.
Yeah.
Part of my motivation on that front is not being, I guess not being selfish with the questions that I'm asking myself, because I don't know what that I'm doing or what I'm saying or what I'm asking would be useful to other people, and I can't assume that the things that I do aren't useful to anyone, because it's not so. Like I said earlier, no one exists in a vacuum. So I think if we take the time to acknowledge that really every little thing we say and do can or does ripple outward, sometimes more profoundly than we think it ever possibly could, then I think it stands to reason that any little question can lead somebody to a breakthrough of some sort. And I don't really see that going on in a place like Facebook. Unfortunately, I feel like we now have this tool and we don't really know how to use it. Same with Twitter, same with Instagram, same with really any social media platform. We've been granted access to this huge, powerful thing, and of course our natural instinct is to just do what we would do in person with it, which is vent and say stupid things and without really realizing the degree to which that is rippling outward. I mean, just for example, if you get on Facebook and vent just a sentence or two, somebody sees that, also gets ticked off. Well, I mean, how is that going to ripple outward?
Exactly.
But yeah, basically in that space, I don't really see very much genuine utility going on, or the potential beneficial uses of the platform being really used at all. So when I'm asking questions, I'm really just serving as a mirror, I guess, as like a check-in point in a otherwise fairly hostile landscape. I mean, when you're scrolling through Facebook, you're traveling through a war zone. Really.
That's true.
So, and I guess, I mean, I know so many people from so many backgrounds, and I either sympathize or empathize with so many of them, even if they come from seemingly opposing viewpoints or something like that. So I guess that has incentivized me to really remove as much of myself from these questions as possible. And one question can be taken 20 different ways by 20 different people if it's phrased quite precisely enough. And at the end of the day, I don't have any answers that anyone else doesn't have. And I wouldn't claim to, so yeah.
No, I love it. It's like refreshing when I get on Facebook and I see like your questions. Like, I love it because first of all, I don't even get on Facebook, honestly, because of the things that you're talking about. There's toxicity, politics. I can't stand like people just talking about politics, and like you're saying, like people venting, all of these different things on Facebook that people aren't using in the right way. And it's refreshing to see you coming at it from a different standpoint, a different perspective, and saying, hey, I'm not going to use this thing to vent or to say, hey, this is my opinion, it's better than yours, but instead to encourage a conversation and to deepen conversations with others in a healthy way. That's not going to either tick somebody off or say, hey, I'm right, you're wrong, or whatever the case may be. So it's really refreshing. You don't see that much on social media, so I love that you do that.
Yeah, I mean, if we want to move forward in any productive, constructive way, we have to find the methods that cut through what's not useful. And if anything's not useful, it's berating other people. That is not helping recruit anyone to your cause, I don't think. But and it, like I said, it's understandable. We just really don't know how to use the tool, and I don't think very many of us really realize the degree to which that affects the people around us. I mean, so many people don't even realize in person, you know. When you're having a bad day and you go to the store and, the cashier's nice to you, well, two things can happen there. Either her politeness kind of breaks you out of your neurotic trance, or you respond in a hostile way back, and all of a sudden her day is ruined. And it would seem that most people wouldn't even catch on to that interaction and how that ripples outward. So it's understandable, but it's not to say that we need to continue doing.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I love how you use the analogy of like it's kind of like Facebook is a war zone, and kind of being that mirror that these people can kind of look at and just get a reality check. Like there's some neutral ground instead of just trying to take one side or the other, bringing that neutralness to the platform.
Yeah, and actually it's. I guess I never really thought about this before when you brought up the the mirror and people seeing themselves and their own hostility in that mirror. It's there is two things, I suppose. I was reading about a few psychology studies essentially that were done with people seeing themselves in the mirror, and the gist is nobody wants to see themselves upset in the mirror. If there's any way to break yourself out of being ticked off, it's to go look in the mirror.
Wow.
I'm sure all of us have walked into the bathroom after throwing and smashing things and seen our tear-stained red faces and been like, wow, that's what I look like right now. And that's kind of like the old folk reasoning for why there are mirrors behind bars. Because if you see yourself drunk, you're less likely to be violent, essentially.
Dang, I didn't know that.
You're more likely to be like, oh, look how pathetic I am, I should go home.
That's hilarious.
Yeah, that's good.
I mean, that's powerful, though. Like, that goes way beneath the surface. That's deep, man. I love that. But, Talen, we know you're a deep thinker, and 2020 has been like a roller coaster. Has 2020, in this year alone, brought any new perspectives, anything new to you, to your brain, to the mind of Talen Hartman?
Yes. I guess both personally and in the broader context of national and world events. Of course, all the personal stuff is going on in the context of what's actually going on in the world. But yeah, so I honestly started this year at pretty much one of the lowest points I've ever been. Through the back half of 2019, I ran myself into the ground, essentially, and kind of watched as everything crumbled around me. Personal endeavors, relationships, so on. And I guess atop all of that alone happening, I guess there's also the blame that I ascribed myself going through that, like failing to navigate that in such a way that things didn't collapse, even if it was inevitable, Right. So I started 2020 in a total ground zero of what am I doing? Who am I? Where do I go from here? That kind of thing. And it, I didn't really have... I knew that I had run myself into the ground. I didn't really know where to pivot toward from there, and I didn't really feel like I had a clean opportunity to reset or restart in a really healthy way. It was kind of just, I felt like I was spinning my tires still, even though I'd pulled the emergency brake.
Dang.
So, I mean, it even got kind of to the point where I was like, what if I just drop everything and leave the country and maybe just don't come back?
Wow.
And I was seriously considering that. And I basically gradually worked toward just trying to figure out how to rebuild myself from the ground up, essentially.
For sure.
Like really everything from the ground up.
Wow.
But and I was still kind of trying to figure out how to do that effectively when quarantine started. And to be honest, as perhaps out of touch or selfish or whatever as it may sound, I was very happy to be in quarantine because I was like, finally I have a chance to be alone and like just be by myself, be with myself, process everything that I've gone through the past year, everything that I've done, all of that, and like really filter out everything that I didn't need to carry anymore. And take the opportunity to trace anything that remained back to its roots. And I was very happy to do that. And that it worked well. I definitely did what I needed to do during that time. But when things started reopening up, obviously there are the questions of how are we going to reopen, what is that timeline going to look like, things like that. I kind of had too much of a good thing and was like, I'm cool. I'm cool alone.
Yeah.
Like, I'm fine. Thank you. But again, it sounds negative, but it is a positive thing. Like being forced to be here really was a good thing because I was like, oh yeah, I forgot what social connection is like. I forgot how important it is. But it was cool because, and I think probably everyone to a degree would say this because this really is unprecedented, but connecting with other people in person just took on a whole another value that it couldn't possibly have had I not been forced to be alone. So I personally feel like I came through that as the stars aligned or whatever so that I could get the most out of all these experiences I possibly could have at the right times. But yeah, as far to actually answer your question though, new perspectives, no shortage of new perspectives and lessons, and my hope would be that such will always be the case moving forward. I mean, if we don't feel like we're learning, if we don't feel like we're gaining new perspectives, then we're really failing to do something. I guess probably one of the biggest things that comes to mind, which is relevant at least spiritually, is I had a lot of spiritual reflection and growth time during that quarantine period, and coming out of that feeling really renewed and refreshed and open in a way that I'd never been before, kind of encountered a few situations in which I felt like people who were claiming to be spiritual or even spiritually mature, or just acting in such a way that that was implicit in their actions, their own conception of their spiritual maturity, was just not. It felt like they were not walking the walk. And I encountered this several times from several different directions, and I kind of hit a breaking point, to be honest, where I was like, you know what? I see all these people around me talking the talk and just failing to walk the walk.
Wow.
And part of the walk is failing to walk the walk. So it's not casting judgment in that sense. Like I said, we're always arriving. But it was just like, how are you saying this one thing and acting totally different, and even claiming that opposite action to be in service of what you're saying?
Wow.
You know? And I was kind of like, you know what? I'm not going to do that. And was charged in, I think, what previously would have been a more negative way. Like, for better or worse, I guess I always kind of feel like I've been led away from what I don't like more than toward what I do like, if that makes sense. And I feel like this was definitely one of those cases where I just saw too much that I didn't like, and I was like, I'm not going to do that anymore. I've done that, and I'm not going to do it anymore. And that was really a challenge to myself of, if I am going to claim to be an even remotely healthy individual, that I need to be a healthy individual. And that, it's every moment is a navigation through that,
So you talked about being healthy, and one aspect of being a healthy person is emotional health. So for you, and it's not the same for everyone, but from your perspective, what would you classify as an emotional healthy person? And do you believe that there's a criteria to that, or is there different stages that people can kind of go through to reach emotional health?
I guess kind of the catch-all, I suppose, would be knowing your, I guess, like, knowing where you're at emotionally, like, and that really comes down to each and every moment. Being able to check in with yourself and be like, am I doing well right now? Like, am I really doing well right now? Because it's too easy, even if you have that idea in the back of your head, to just not actually explore it. I mean, every feeling that we have, positive or negative, is rooted somewhere. And it's really in our best interest and in the best interest of everyone around us that we can work through that effectively, I mean, and that includes, like, knowing your limits, knowing when to stop, knowing when you're not okay.
Yeah.
And really having the openness and honesty and transparency with yourself to know when to stop, and to know when you're maybe not doing the best that you could be, whether you're failing to do something or doing too much or what have you, and I mean that flows so directly into spiritual health, I suppose, that it really is hard to separate the two. Really, all we have is our emotional health, in the sense of everything that we see and do is filtered through the lens of our perception, and our perception is to varying degrees, arguably guided by our emotions, and the degree to which we can kind of peel back that pure identification with the emotion is, I would say, the degree to which we're emotionally healthy. I mean, everyone at some point is going to have strong emotions. One way or another, positive or negative, valence, however they consider it. And I think it's the degree to which we can take a step back from that that indicates our emotional health. I mean, when we're enraged, for example, we're really living in tunnel vision, you know, and I mean, having been enraged plenty often in my existence so far, I can surely attest to that, and how, you know, when that breaks off or fades away or what have you, it's almost like everything reopens. And same goes for, I mean, when you're depressed, that is legitimate tunnel vision, just experientially. And there's, you know, that is the condition that you're existing in there. But if we can work on our ability to understand that we don't exist within our emotions exist within us, but it seems that we don't typically operate under that understanding, right? I mean, when you're ticked off, when you're sad, when you're triggered emotionally in whatever way, that is taking place within the frame of your conscious experience. And I would say that emotional health is the ability to kind of see that and kind of pick it out for what it is and know, I'm really upset right now. And I feel it, and it feels like my entire body is on fire. But I don't have to break things, you know? Yeah. I don't have to curse the people around me. I can take a moment to explore this and take a step back and really not be dragged along as if by a rope by our feelings, you know. It's not to say we need to be robots, obviously. The emotion is a good thing, but it's just knowing its context, I guess, and that to me would be emotional health. And then really, just cultivating that ability to check in with yourself and knowing when you're okay, when you're not okay, legitimately okay or not okay. And that really ties directly into spiritual health. I mean, I know at Abundant Life we often talk about the kind of two sides of the same coin kind of idea that is emotional health and spiritual health and their relationship. But, you know, knowing your limits and knowing where you're at, if anything, I think ties directly into spiritual health in the sense of, I guess this actually goes back to what we were talking about earlier with when I ran myself into the ground last year. That was due to a total overabundance of pride and ambition and a total lack of, humility, essentially, to to kind of push me where I needed to be. And if spiritual growth and development and spiritual health is a matter of removing or deflating our overinflation of ourselves, then it's all one big thing.
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah, I love that. I love like just hearing your mind and hearing like you talk just about everything, because I'm like, dang, I'm jealous. I wish I could talk like Talen, like think like Talen. Like, I love being in the mind of Talen. Like I just love it. It's captivating. I don't know. I just love it. And your voice is just like so soothing. Like it's perfect for the podcast. We love it. And but we're gonna go a little deeper. Probably like the deepest question of all time.
Yeah.
What is the meaning of life?
So I guess I have two answers, and they are arguably opposing. Or not, perhaps. I personally don't feel that there is any inherent meaning outside of the context of purpose, I suppose. I mean, when we think about what we consider good or bad, that's against the test of what our goal is. So if we're looking at the meaning of, what does it mean that I happened to read this particular book at this time in my life and it led to these results? Well, we can only weigh that up against what it led to, right? So, yeah, I guess that's part one. Yeah, I guess the short answer would be I don't see meaning existing inherently outside of purpose, and we ascribe our own meaning and purpose to our life. I mean, one single event can be taken a multitude of ways depending on what the end goal is. So I guess really then there are an infinite number of meanings to life, I guess, which sounds like a cop-out, but
I mean, I think that's cool though, because like that's not something I would ever say. Like I'd be like, oh, the meaning of life is to worship God or whatever. Like, I mean, it's cool that like you bring that perspective, because you're right, there can be so many different meanings because there's so many different people, there's so many different personalities, characteristics out there, and there's an infinite amount of meaning.
Yeah, I feel like there's no really a right answer to it.
Yeah.
In a sense that, it's going to be interpreted differently by everyone.
Yeah.
And that's the beauty of it, really. The beauty of life is that there's no definite answer.
Yeah.
Yeah, and if like even claiming to be able to answer that for other people would be like the least humble thing I could imagine.
Yeah.
So, yeah, which doesn't seem to be a very spiritually healthy thing to do.
So Talen, we know that you do audio engineering here at Abundant Life Church, and just some sound stuff. I don't know all that you do, but I know you're super smart, super good with sound stuff. But what made you want to do what you're doing now in doing audio engineering?
Yeah, so I saw it as a good opportunity to kind of have access to all the different things that I wanted to do, but knew that I would never be able to commit fully to. I mean, music, obviously, is a big one, and just really all the different lanes that you could possibly travel within the arts alone. But yeah, I saw it as a skill that would allow me to explore places and have kind of access to people that I otherwise wouldn't, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Like all the different musicians, all the different people that I would work with, and that kind of thing. I also wasn't, like, I was planning on going to music school, but really wasn't good enough to really do that, and also didn't know, like, if that's really what I wanted to do for the rest of my life. But what I figured is, okay, music is this fun thing. I don't want to burn myself out on it by making it my job, so I'll be in the same field as it, but not be in the position of having to do it.
Yeah.
And I think that's worked out fairly well, because most of my personal and artistic endeavors are in the same general region, but separate from my occupation.
It's a time of de-stressing instead of worrying about it. You still get to enjoy what you want to do with music, but at the same time working in what you want to do with it as well.
That's cool.
Yeah, that's awesome. So kind of going into that, working at the church, it's kind of more behind the scenes, being up on the balcony or working with the audio and engineering stuff. Do you feel like a part of change and without having that spotlight on you?
Yeah, if anything, I guess it's easy for me to forget how critical my role is and how critical the tech team's role is in making everything function on Sunday. I'm not sure what the root of this would be, but I guess for the most part, if I'm not really being fully present and engaged, I'm kind of, when I'm on autopilot, essentially, I'm inclined to think, well, what I'm doing, it's not that big a deal, right? But like we were talking about earlier with how every little thing ripples outward, if, Pastor John is speaking and Mike starts feeding back, that's distraction. And that could, even though it seems like a small, inconsequential thing, and even though I guess I've been around it so often that it's not that big a deal in the sense of like, oh, it's just feedback, or you fix it. For someone who's paying attention, that could be the little thing that kind of knocks them off, and all of a sudden they're not here anymore. They're like, what is that? So that's kind of something I gotta constantly remind myself of, that I do play an important role here.
For sure. I mean, just me being a part of the worship team and the impact that you guys are for us on stage and making the sound pure. And it, like you said, it ripples out, because then that's what they hear as a congregation and how they get engaged through worship. So absolutely, just from my point of view, you guys and as a tech team and you specifically directing that is a crucial part of a team here and of any church. So definitely I see the impact. Well, that's awesome. And a tradition we like to do here on the Prism Podcast is we like to do a quick rapid-fire 1-minute question thing.
Yeah.
So we're going to knock these out and get your take on these questions.
All right, let's do it. 1 minute. Ready?
Set, go. Favorite food?
Oranges.
Okay. Favorite animal?
Ooh, I got a couple. Orangutan, rat, tortoises / turtles.
Okay.
Favorite band?
Favorite band? Oh, no. I'm just going to say Outkast.
Favorite TV show?
The Amazing World of Gumball.
Oh.
Favorite movie?
Can we skip?
If you could have any 3 people, dead or alive, over for dinner, who would it be?
Wait. Can we skip?
Rapid fire.
We'll come back.
Okay. What is your spirit animal?
Oh, spirit animal? Oh, tortoise, easy.
If you could have one superpower, what would it be?
Invisibility would be cool. I don't know that I'd pick that, but that would be a cool one.
Beach or mountains?
Mountains.
Coffee or tea?
Tea.
Favorite place in the world?
Right here.
Hey.
Something on your bucket list?
Go to Japan.
All right, that's time.
There we go.
Good job, man. Those are hard. Some of those are like not rapid fire. Tal was like, "Oh, I'm gonna have to think all day about this."
Well, we had to sit there and think, what are some questions from Talen that would be pretty cool to hear?
Right?
So,
Right? Oh my gosh.
Awesome.
That was a fun time, dude.
Yeah, dude.
Tal, we thank you so much for joining us here on the podcast.
For sure.
We enjoyed hearing the mind of Talen. So it's always inspiring.
it was
to
a
hear
great
that.
pleasure to have you on the show with
Yeah,
us. So.
that's awesome.
Awesome, guys. Well, that wraps up episode 11, interview with Talen Hartman. We hope you guys enjoyed. If you guys want to hear this podcast, check us out on Spotify at the Prism Podcast. If you want to watch this interview in general, head to our YouTube channel at the Prism Podcast. Hit that like button, that subscribe button, and hit that little bell that gives you notifications whenever we post.
Do it all, yeah.
And if you guys want to hit us up, give us insight, feedback, requests for topics for our next episodes, hit us up on Instagram at the Prism Podcast as well. We can't thank you guys enough for tuning in with us, and we'll see you next time.
Awesome. Love y'all.